start recording the meeting, please.
1 second. Can I confirm your microphone, please, Councillor Johnson? What number are you? Sorry. What number are you? 34. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Stream slide.
Thank you very much. So good evening, everybody. Just before we start the meeting, if I can just take us through the usual housekeeping issues. So can I remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording will be archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking? And if a participant wishes to speak, can they please raise their hand in person if sat in the chamber, or use the remote raise hand function. If a participant raises their hand via the remote function and is not subsequently invited to speak, please could they turn their camera on to indicate that they wish to speak or place a message in the chat function. When invited to address the committee by the chair, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera is on to ensure that they can be seen and heard when actively participating. And if this isn't possible for any reason, please bring that to my attention as the chair or Democratic Services Officer as soon as possible. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues or to get the attention of myself as chair or a Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when addressing the committee, then they should let myself or Democratic Officer know. That's the end of the housekeeping. So please can I welcome all committee and non-committee elected members and our officers, and also to anyone who is watching the live meeting broadcast. Moving straight on to the agenda and beginning with agenda item 1 and apologies for absence. Do we have any, please? Councillor Hooper?
Councillor Stefan William.
Thank you. Are there any other apologies? No other apologies. So now on to the minutes of the previous meeting from the 14th of November. Are members happy with those minutes? Can I ask for a proposer? Councillor Hooper, thank you. And can I ask for a seconder, please? Councillor Iannucci, I can see you've raised your hand. Thank you very much. And on to declarations of interest. Are there any, please? So I see no hands, so I'd like to declare an interest in relation to agenda item 5, the annual delivery plan for 24-25. I'm a trustee of the Vale Food Bank, which is one of the organisations the council works with in relation to supporting residents with cost of living issues. My interest is personal and not prejudicial, and I have dispensation to speak on this issue, so I will remain in the meeting. Thank you. So committee members, just to let you know, I'm going to change the order of tonight's agenda and take the financial reports in sequence, and we'll then take the 2 performance reports. So we will start with agenda item 4, refresh of the medium-term financial plan 24-25 to 28-29. This is the first of 2 references from Cabinet and the first of our financial reports this evening. Just to remind councillors that the purpose of this report is to refresh spend and funding assumptions and provide an update on the next steps for approving the medium-term financial plan and setting the 24-25 budget in March 2024. It's before the committee this evening so we can review the work mitigating the cost pressures and refer any comments back to Cabinet. Can I invite Gemma to take us through it, please? Thank you, Gemma.
Thank you. Apologies to members who sat through these slides a few times now. I'm just going to take us through a very high level overview of where we are in the kind of budget setting process and some of the figures that have come out of that. And I'll try and draw out some of the specific cost pressures relevant to this scrutiny committee. Okay, thank you very much. So in terms of the budget planning cycle, we're really talking about a continuous cycle throughout the year. As you'll recall, we brought the refresh of the financial strategy back in July. And then over the summer, we asked directorates to pull out specific cost pressures for their service areas. Those cost pressures have fed through into the report that's before you tonight. As part of that exercise, we identified £38 million of cost pressures, which gave us a significant funding gap based on our assumptions of around £10 million additional funding. And so we have performed an additional exercise, which is refining those cost pressures through a very robust review of what can be allocated, which I'll come onto in some of the later slides. Outside of this committee, we're probably on that formulation of savings step ahead of the provisional settlement, which is due to be received next week. So directorates are putting forward various proposals for both tactical and transformation savings, because one of our key priorities as part of this budget setting cycle is not only putting forward a balanced budget in January, but also having and kick-starting some transformation initiatives that are going to see us through the funding challenges in the next few years. We'll be coming back to Cabinet in January with an initial budget proposals, which will take those provisional settlement figures through and then kick off that consultation process. So we'll be back to scrutiny in February with committee-specific figures. In terms of the budget setting, it's set within a broad financial strategy, so focus on supporting the most vulnerable, but also focus on continuing to deliver Project Zero, and we need to establish sustainable finances. So we're hoping to, as I said on the previous slide, not just resolve the 24-25 position, but draw out some initiatives and transformation proposals over that 5-year period. It's really important that we sustain appropriate level of reserves. One of the important reasons we keep reserves is to support some of our risk areas. So we need to make sure that the Section 151 officer is able to say that we have appropriate levels of reserves as part of the report in March. A key lever as part of that funding position will be generating local tax revenue, and we'll also be looking at fees and charges, and that will come as part of the January report. As a council, we have collective responsibility to manage the finances and endeavouring to make sure that those finances are accessible and transparent. Just picking up the next slide, this draws out some of the key figures that are within the report. So you'll see that £10 million additional funding in 24-25. And this shows cost pressures of just short of 21 million, and that's after the refinement process has been carried out. So specific to this scrutiny committee, we had cost pressures around road maintenance, the additional cost of maintaining our roads, so addressing potholes, road safety, and some pressures around supported bus, response to sustainable drainage. And in the Place Directorate, we had cost pressures around additional resource for project management, in respect of planning, and also events. And based on this 20,767,000, none of those cost pressures have been able to be taken forward. So I think given some of the statutory services that fall in some of the other scrutiny committee areas, it does mean that there's a significant gap, particularly in this scrutiny committee, between the cost pressures that are being put forward and what's being proposed will be addressed as part of this financial strategy. There's also an additional pressure in terms of the cost pressure around pay, and as part of this strategy, we're proposing that we'll only be able to fund 75% of the projected pay costs across the council. And that obviously builds in a savings requirement before we start to look at closing the residual gap as well. So as I said, we are there's various other potential levers that we can use to close the residual gap for 24-25. And some of those things are around looking at the council tax base, council tax collection, but a significant proportion of that will need to come through savings proposals, and directorates are working at pulling together savings proposals, and the target figure that we're working for at the moment is just short of £7.5 million. And as you see, although we historically have far higher levels of cost pressures as we approach a new financial year, we do have a funding gap across the medium-term financial period as well that we will need to address. And you'll see that we have quite low prospects for government grant increases across that period. And that's certainly in line with the kind of indicative information we've had as part of the fiscal analysis. But we'll continue to keep that under review as we go through the medium-term period. So just picking up on the next slide, some of the key dates. Obviously, we've had the UK government budget. I think we didn't see any consequentials that we thought that the council would benefit from as a result of that. We are awaiting now the Welsh Government settlement just before Christmas, and we'll be working on those figures to bring a budget for consultation in January, and then working towards consulting on that budget with a view to setting the final budget by that statutory deadline of the 11th of March. And that's the main points I was going to draw out on that report, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Gemma. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Gemma, please? Councillor Hooper?
I think this has been a useful exercise, especially we went through it when you went through with councillors recently. So some of this is in our sphere. We already know some of these things are happening. But if I can just ask a couple of questions that I asked at that last meeting, just to reiterate, and in the view that this is a public meeting. Firstly, we often talk about cost pressures and the need to reduce costs. This is a continuous conversation. And the point that I've made, and I made it last year, I'll continue to make it, is that at some point we have to actually deal with this thing properly and get to some sort of zero-based budgeting approach that actually starts from scratch and realises what do we need to spend on what activities as a council. And I'm concerned again that that's a cost pressure that's almost being, we're almost not being prepared to spend on that, to invest, to save, which I think is a real opportunity. So that's the first one I'd be interested in your views on. And also, perhaps you could expand on the additional local taxes point. We have the opportunity to be able to tax, to set a tourism levy in the Vale of Glamorgan. I'd be interested as to whether or not that appears. And the other thing, and I noticed later on in some of our reports, we noticed that the permit parking paper is still delayed. And I'm just wondering whether or not the council has any thoughts, or you're aware of any thoughts where fees may be attached to permit parking and whether they're starting to appear in the budget. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hooper, my apologies, Councillor Ernest, you actually had your hand up first. So apologies, I missed that. Would you like to come in and we'll take your questions and comments next, and then we'll come back to you, Gemma.
Yes, Chair. Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, in many ways, Councillor Hooper sort of touched on the points I was going to raise. I was concerned to read that we're going to charge 100% and 200% on council tax on void properties. I mean, that's something discussed The other issue, which we always get every year, is fees and charges. And very often increases in fees and charges are a bit self-defeating, because we put the charge up by 6% or whatever, and then we find that the level of usage of sports facilities, football matches and so on falls away. So sometimes it's a bit self-defeating. I was a little concerned also to hear that events have made a loss as well. We try to run events, and I've had great interest in these over the years, but we try to run events at a profit. If we're actually making a loss on those, I think that is a little regrettable, and it may be something we've got to look at carefully. But perhaps the major point I think that Gemma was making was the shortfall on the pay for payroll. We're not going to cover our costs there, and that's a substantial increase towards the council tax that looks likely as a consequence of that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Gemma, are you able to respond to those issues? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So in terms of some of the issues around void properties and the decision to charge a premium there, I think, you know, there's specific policy reasons for progressing that policy, which was set out in the original report, and part of that is around trying to bring some of those empty homes back into supply. So we have a supply of housing within the Vale, which we know is in quite short supply. So that's one of the reasons for implementing that policy, in addition to trying to raise some income to addressing housing concerns across the council. In terms of fees and charges, you're absolutely right. There can be unintended consequences around increasing fees and charges with a blanket increase. Our proposal is to charge CPI wherever possible to increase fees and charges. But there are specific areas where we will seek to avoid that. And one of those is around youth sports. So I think there are concerns that where we increase charges by CPI, there could be an impact on the take-up of youth sports. So I think that's an area that we are intending not to increase by CPI. A lot of the areas where we are charging fees and charges, they're discretionary areas, and we're trying to move to a cost recovery basis. And part of that enables us to continue to offer that service within the challenging budget constraints that we're facing. So some of that is around ensuring that we have sustainable finances. In terms of events, we have historically funded a base contribution to events from a reserve, and that reserve was completely used up in last financial year. So this was around establishing a rolling base budget for events. What we're proposing is that events would, wherever possible, be sponsored or would generate some kind of stream of income to fund those events. So we'll be undertaking some work to see how feasible that is going forward. Shall I pick up?
Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Shall I pick up Councillor Hooper's
Yes, if you
questions
could.
now as well?
Thank you, Gemma.
Okay, so in terms of zero-based budgeting, I'll try and give you the same response that you had at the members' meeting. And I think it was largely around the resource impact of carrying out a full zero-based budgeting exercise. Where I think we will certainly need to do a zero-based budgeting exercise is around some of those transformation proposals. And obviously we'll be building up some of those budgets from scratch. So there certainly is an opportunity to invest in some zero-based budgeting as part of those full-scale review of budget areas, and also where we're doing cost recovery potentially to a lesser extent, although I wouldn't want to guarantee that that's always being undertaken, but it's potentially an area that we can explore further going forward. In terms of the tourism levy, I can confirm that there is no proposal around tourism levy as part of these assumptions. And in terms of the question around permit parking, there are proposals around parking coming forward as part of the savings and transformation proposals that will come forward as part of the budget, but they form part of an review of parking, so around a parking strategy, and those proposals are currently being worked up but will be brought in January.
Thank you, Gemma. I see no other hands, no other comments. So just a couple of comments from me, if I may. So in terms of the budget setting process, the report sets out a continuing commitment to ensuring services to the most vulnerable residents in the Vale are maintained. And I hope, committee, that that's something that we will all continue to support and feed back to Cabinet our support for that proposal, and that should be maintained going forward. And also something that has been said in a number of committees prior to this, when the council is clearly facing some significant challenges in terms of the budget position for next year. And I think it's important that we emphasise the need to ensure public consultation is clearly set out within the reality of the economic pressures the council is facing to ensure that expectations are managed. So I would propose that that feedback is given on behalf of the committee back to Cabinet. Councillor Hooper, if you press your request to speak button, yeah, thank you, that's helpful. Do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to follow up on the point, and it's really not a point that I don't think Gemma can answer, but I wonder whether anyone else is on the call. So if our pressures are that dramatically poor, why aren't we considering a tourism levy, which we're allowed to do within the medium-term financial plan? I don't think it's necessary. This is a policy issue that we've got the opportunity to do from with it. Welsh Government have given us the remit to do that. And I think this is really requires a political answer to be able to come to that, because I'd like to understand why not. Because I think, as you said, Chair, we need to consider everything that's out there. This is a tough time to be in council to deliver public services. And this is a good example of something that's where we've been given the leeway to do this. And I find it strange that it's not there. So I'd be really interested in a response. I don't know who's on the call. I can't really see. If it was on screen, I'd be able to see it. I just wonder whether, a Cabinet member wants to respond. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hooper. I can see Marcus Goldsworthy has joined us on the call and has requested to speak. Marcus, are you able to respond to that comment? Yes, thank you.
I can, Chair, yes. I can't give a political response, but I can give a response around where we are currently. Although Welsh Government have consulted on a tourism tax, the powers aren't yet there to actually levy a tax. And so we are currently in a position where we couldn't, even if we wanted to. The Council's position on the tourism tax is currently set out in the Cabinet report that went to committee, went to Cabinet, I think, early part of this year, when the consultation was carried out by Welsh Government, where essentially at this stage we do not consider we would be levying it. That's not to say that in the future, when the powers are enacted, that we might not reconsider, but that would be obviously a decision which would be a political one and would be taken when the powers are enacted, and we know exactly what that means in terms of taking that forward. And I'll give you an example. What I mean there is that when the consultation was undertaken, there were a number of different elements to that consultation around whether the council set the tax itself, whether there was a set tax from Welsh Government which the council then collected, or whether the council could opt out entirely. And we gave views on all of those, but we haven't yet got a clear picture on what will be enacted by Welsh Government if that is the case.
Thank you, Marcus. That's really helpful. Does that answer your question, Councillor Hooper? Yes, good. Thank you. So I see no other hands raised to speak. I think in terms of feedback to Cabinet, if committee are happy to support the comments I made earlier about continuing to ensure that we prioritise the most vulnerable members of society and also ensure that public consultation clearly sets out the reality of the economic pressure the Council is facing to ensure expectations are managed. Are committee members happy to support that feedback to Cabinet? Yes, I see no dissent, and thank you, Councillor Hooper, for indicating your support. So, as I said previously, I'm going to change the order of the agenda. So next we'll have agenda item 6, Capital Monitoring Report for the 1st of April to the 30th of September 2023. This report is to advise committee of the progress with the capital programme, and it's for us to note and just to highlight that there are issues within the report which are of particular relevance to this committee, and no doubt, Gemma, you'll highlight those as you take us through it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please. Okay, so in terms of the capital monitoring report for Q2, this first slide just gives you a snapshot of the overall programme. We did start out with an approved programme of 129 million, and there's a number of changes, in part slippage and some stripping out of the programme. That means that the forecast outturn is reduced to just short of 108 million. An actual spend to date is 25.7 million. What we do see is that in some of the larger schemes can progress in terms of spend very quickly, and we sometimes experience some delay around jobs being charged to the ledger. So it can be that the spend can hit the ledger quite quickly, but I would expect some additional slippage to come through in some of the later reports. So if I just go on to the next slide. This report also picks up a capital programme review that was undertaken, and this was undertaken as part of the mitigation from the emerging revenue overspend that's also reported on this agenda this evening. It's really stripping out some schemes where the funding hadn't already been allocated, the schemes hadn't been tendered, or the schemes were unlikely to be delivered in year, or were no longer of high corporate priority in the context of the funding challenges that we've seen. So the detail of the capital programme review is within the report, and as you can see, it did release some additional reserves in year, but also some capital receipts and general capital funding that could be reallocated within the programme. In terms of some of the requests under the remit of this scrutiny committee, there were 4 requests that were detailed within the capital programme review section. So there was a scheme in respect of bridge structures that we have stripped out of the programme. There's environment and carry forward to the highway improvements resurfacing budget, and also a proposal to remove the uncommitted 23-24 budget for vehicle replacement and Barry Regeneration and Cosmoston Lodge scheme. And it was set out in the report that an element of funding would be set aside to be utilised for the Barry Regeneration partnership within a reserve. There are 4 requests within the environment and housing section. One, to increase the vehicle replacement programme to reflect the purchase of 2 minibuses for social services. There's a small virement from the bridge structures budget to the Penarth Marina slope stabilisation scheme, and some increases around the LTF bus stop improvement scheme, and also merging that scheme with another bus stop improvement scheme in the programme. Within the play section, there is a request to include a scheme to enable the repayment to Welsh Government in relation to a land transaction with in relation to goods sheds. There are 3 requests to carry forward budget for the retaining wall at Windsor Road, Atlantic Trading Operations, Fleet Parking and Household Waste Recycling Centre. 2 requests to carry forward budget for Mirchfield Community Sports Facility and the Business Service Centre 2. And then there are 4 delegated authority requests within the report relevant to this scrutiny committee as well. And that includes schemes added to be funded by the UK government SPF grants. Happy to take any questions on that report.
Thank you, Gemma. If I can start with a question. So first of all, a comment. So great to see the completion of the skate park at the NAP. seeing that being really well used already, which is fantastic, and also good to see that funding's been secured to deliver biodiversity improvements in the catchment area of the River Thor. Can I ask why 400,000 has been uncommitted in relation to the vehicle replacement scheme? And does that have an impact on our move to electric vehicles?
Sorry, Gemma, 1 second. Would you mind coming off screen?
So in terms of the 400,000 that's been decommitted, it was purely because that funding hadn't been committed in year as part of our review of uncommitted capital streams that we could strip out to release some of the pressure on the revenue budget. In terms of delivery of electric vehicles, I think that would be part of a wider strategic review. And I believe some work is being undertaken at the moment in terms of how that can be delivered across the council's fleet.
Councillor Driscoll, I can see you want to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Councillor Driscoll.
Good. Yeah, just a question for Gemma. 243, Merchfield Community Sports Facilities. I was under the impression this was going to be covered by 106 money, so I'm not quite sure why it's in the capital programme, or do you do that with 106 and then subsidise it?
Chair, just to clarify, so section 106, where it funds a capital scheme, would be within the capital programme, and then it would be funded as a capital grant or contribution. So, yeah, section 106 schemes where they meet the capital criteria would be in the capital programme.
So that is coming through 106 then, yeah, Jenna?
Chair, I believe there is a section 106 contribution. I don't know the exact funding makeup, but I can confirm that for Councillor Driscoll.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ernest, please.
Yes, Chairman. Just a couple of points perhaps Gemma could enlarge on. The LTF bus stop improvements, where there's an overspend there, and the bus infrastructure fund as well, where we seem to have had a further overspend. We seem rather unfortunate with bus facilities in the Vale. And the last one really is the Bellevue community scheme, where I see we need another £50,000 because we're badly overspent on that scheme, which was somewhat unwanted by a number of people in the Vale, but the building's there now. But it's unfortunate that the 106 money is not covering that cost, and we've got to find a further £50,000 out of our budget to finish the job. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest. I don't know if there's any response you want to make to those comments, Gemma.
Councillor Ernest, apologies. I'm not being very helpful with those responses. I'm going to need to go away and get a bit more detail for you as part of those responses. So I'll make sure that that's emailed to committee.
Yes, quite happy for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. Councillor Prothero, did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Brilliant, thank you. I just wanted to ask a question, please, about 2.35. It's on page 12. It's the Household Waste Recycling Centre and attempts to find a new site, which has resulted in a carryover of the budget over a number of years. I understand the complexities with this kind of site and the licensing and why that is problematic. But what I can't understand from the information we've got here is why the 1.955 million, which is what was carried over this year, for next year has been reduced to 1.205 million. So I just would like to find out, where has the 750,000 gone? Where's the £750,000 million gone? And what is it being spent on? Thank you.
Apologies, Councillor Prothero. I'm also going to have to take that question away. I don't have an answer for you this evening. Apologies.
Thank you, Gemma. I can see that Emma Reid has requested to speak. Emma, did you want to come in on that issue? Just waiting to see if you want to join us to respond to that issue, Emma.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, good evening. Councillor Petherill, I can answer the question to do with Landau, but not where the money's gone. So originally the 1.9 was the estimated cost for a new household waste recycling site at Landau. We haven't at the moment been successful in finding a site. So we're obviously looking to see if we can find a site. But in the meantime, I'm hoping you've picked up that there's been the start of resurfacing work on the entrance to the existing site at at Landau. And there'll be further resurfacing works now over in the new year, which will make the current site much more accessible to the public, less potholes, etc. So I'm really pleased that we've managed to secure that with the landowner. We're still looking for a site, so as to where we're going on that, it's still very much up for discussion. So I don't know why it's been reduced, but I would say we would struggle to spend 2 million next year on it when we don't even have a site or new site at the moment. But we do have the option. We are improving the existing access, which is the main complaint that most people have.
Thank you, Emma. Does that address your
Can I come back in?
question? Yes, please do, Councillor
Well,
Prothero.
not really. What I want to know is, well, what that £750,000 is going to be spent on, because to take it out of that budget, and I think we always knew when you actually do find a site, it's going to cost more than 2 million to build it. So it's just where the money will go, or where it has gone, because it doesn't actually explain that. That's all. Thank you. And I appreciate you might not be able to answer that right now.
Yeah, thank you. I think Gemma would like to come in on that point. Thank you, Gemma.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for the waving of hands. So I think in terms of the budget, the 1.955 million, we've only slipped 1.2 million of that into next financial year. So the 750 remains in this financial year in terms of in the capital programme. So there's no money that's been taken out of the budget. It's just it's now been profiled over 2 years, although obviously from what Emma is saying, it seems that the balance of that budget will now need to be slipped into next financial year as well.
Thank you, Gemma. Does that address your query, Councillor Prothero? I'm not sure if we've lost Councillor Prothero. I think we may have done. So, Councillor Prothero, if you can hear us and you're struggling to rejoin us, I'll bring you back in if you raise your hand and want to speak again in relation to that or any other issue. In the interim, Councillor Hooper, did you have a question or comment, please?
I do. 2 questions, please, Gemma. On the changes to the capital programme for the year, there's one that really stands out in terms of its the budget that was the approved programme was set, and the outturn is so wildly different, and it's on the city deal. And this is an area that we've spoken about before, and I wonder whether any details on that. On a broader perspective, when the approved programme was set at 129 million, inflation was lower than it was today. I just wonder, have you got any idea of how much of this has been lost to inflation, the capital? So how much value we could get with our money as opposed to where we are now? Because this decrease of 18.8 million is in effect, it could be a lot higher in terms of actual what you spent the money on, because we're getting less with our pound now than we were a year ago. Thank you, Chair.
Gemma, would you like to come in on those issues?
Yes, yeah, happy to. So in terms of City Deal, does reflect a reprofile that we've been advised of by the Central City Deal team. There is some detail around that that I can share with members. So, but I haven't got it on me today. And in terms of the question, in terms of the real terms impact of this slippage, obviously it's going to be twofold, isn't it? I suppose where that scheme has been tendered and it's just around the delivery of that scheme, albeit that scheme might have slipped in terms of the original tender plan. There wouldn't be as much of an impact, but absolutely, I take your point. There would be, we have lost value in terms of the inflationary cost, particularly in the construction sector that we are seeing, and that will have a real impact on the volume of works that we're able to deliver within this funding envelope. But I haven't got specific figures for you available today, but I'm happy to take it away and have a look at it.
And my understanding is that we will have a report on Cardiff Capital City Deal at some point in the new year, so we can try to clarify the timescales for that, and that'll give an opportunity, Councillor Hooper and others who are interested, for us to scrutinise those issues in more detail. But did you want to come back in on that issue?
Can I make a point on that? Because I think we consistently get references to the City Deal without any information that backs it up. And I do appreciate, Chair, that we're going to get a report on this, but this is something that there's almost an obliqueness to it. And I ask the question at almost every committee that I sit at, to where can we have some more detail on it? We don't get it on the accounts. I appreciate Gemma's going to send us some information on this now, but this should be in the report. It should be stuff that we should be able to scrutinise. And it's one of those things, if we're not scrutinising it, all I can suggest is that every other of the 9 other local authorities are also seeing the same lack of information. So who is scrutinising it from the perspective of the local elected members like ourselves? And we need to do it. This is an important scrutiny deficit that I think we need to do. I'd quite like, if we can, to get some sort of agreement across the committee that this is something we'd like to see more of, and therefore not to just have City Deal is almost an ignorable bit. It's small, but in the scale, if you look at the percentage change period on the point at the start to the point we are now, it's the biggest single difference. So it is worthy of decent scrutiny. And I think we should be given that, we should be shown those details. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. And just to reassure you, Councillor Hooper, that as chair of this committee, I sit on the Cardiff Capital Regional City Deal Scrutiny. I attended my first meeting last week. And as I say, my understanding and expectation is that we will have a report coming before the committee in the new year. And as this committee's representative on that scrutiny, I would say I'm more than happy for councillors to raise any issues with me so that we can make sure that the scrutiny, which clearly is important, can happen and can go forward through officers and others in the appropriate way.
Okay.
Thank
Chair?
you. I'm going to bring in Councillor Ernest, but if you want to come back in on that last point, Councillor Hooper, please do. Excuse me.
Can you tell us why there's a difference between those two figures then, Chair, as you're that representative?
No, I can't, because that issue wasn't discussed at that scrutiny meeting. But as you've already been advised, we will try to find that information and bring it back in the appropriate way at the appropriate time. Thank you. Councillor Ernest, did you want to come in?
Yes, Chairman, really, I just want to come in behind Councillor Hooper because my reading of the Cardiff Capital Region minutes is that they're extremely brief. Most of the time, they simply record how the delegates present voted. In many cases, delegates are absent from the meeting, but it actually tells you nothing whatsoever about the subject under discussion. And whereas, to be fair, here in the Vale, we get very good minutes, and I compliment Democratic Services on that. We get all the detail that we need and we can read into that. When it comes to Cardiff Capital Region, it's simply a decision is made, it's voted on, and that's it. And I think that's the point that Councillor Hooper was probably getting at or trying to get at. I'll simply reinforce it by asking you, Madam Chairman, as our representative or one of our representatives on Cardiff Capital Region, that we should have much more detailed minutes from that body. It's getting a lot of money from UK government. It's also getting money from ourselves as well as local authorities. And I think we deserve a better quality of minutes, which quite frankly, they're not offering at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Those comments are noted, Councillor Ernest. So coming back to the report that is before us, I don't see any other hands. Yes, Marcus, do you want to come in? I'm sure you want to come in and talk to us about the Cardiff Capital City Region deal. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to advise that minutes of those Cardiff Capital Region Cabinet or Corporate Joint Committee Cabinets are available. They are reported to our Cabinet periodically. So if members want to view those, they just need to look at the previous Cabinet reports and the minutes that are reported there.
Chairman, I do appreciate that, but it's the minute detail within those reports. So I agree with Marcus, but my point still stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest. And if I can just remind all councillors, if you could just raise your request to speak button and wait until you're invited in, that would be really helpful for the business of the committee. Thank you. Just one final comment from me in relation to the report that's before us. And that's just, I think it's not always clear why some overspends or slippage have occurred, and it would be helpful if reports could just give an indication of that. So where budgets have overspent, for example, it would be helpful to understand whether that's perhaps because the volume of work has been greater than originally anticipated or because costs have increased. And ditto with slippage, it would be helpful if that could be clarified within the reports. In many instances it is, but it isn't in all. And so if that could be considered for future reports, that would be really helpful. Thank you. So can I ask then, is committee happy to move that we note this report? Proposed by Councillor Hooper. Thank you. And can I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Catherine Iannucci, did you want to second that?
Oh, yes, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Iannucci. So the next item on the agenda is our final finance report, which is the Q2 Revenue Monitoring Report for 23-24. This report is to advise committee of the projected revenue outturn for 23-24, and it's for committee to note. Again, there are some issues within the report that are of particular relevance to this committee. And Gemma, I think you're taking us through this one as well, please.
Apologies. So this first slide sets out an overview of the overall council's position to give us some context in terms of the specific scrutiny committee's position. We are continuing to see a quite challenging revenue position as at the Q2 monitoring, and that's specifically seeing pressures, emerging pressures in the social services sector, but we do also have some challenging circumstances in the school sector. We have that recurring overspend that we've seen for a number of years around school transport, and we also have a small underspend for overspend for private housing. So we have an overall unplanned use of reserves of 6.768 corporately, and a further 6.5 million for schools, and we have a net overspend position for schools in year. The report sets out a revised budget. So as part of this budget, we have stripped out the corporate recharges that have been traditionally reported on service lines. And so we're showing a significantly increased budget against corporate resources, and that includes charges for things like office accommodation, some of the central ICT systems, but also HR, legal, finance, and the contact centre. Within the report, we've also set out some steps that have been taken to mitigate the emerging overspends in year, and that includes controls around non-essential spend, around recruitment for vacant posts. A number of steps have been taken within directorates. So, for instance, social services have done an audit of high-cost placements, and also that review of the capital programme that we talked about on the previous report. So just moving on to the next slide, which very quickly summarises the key headlines. So as I say, there's been some overspends around social services across adults and children and young people. Schools, transport and highways maintenance are also emerging areas of overspend, and we've got some mitigation from policy underspends, including some declaration of council tax surplus. So looking at the committee's specific position, we're reporting a £1.2 million overspend within environment and transport, and that's offset by underspends within policy and corporate resources. One of the main areas of pressure within neighbourhood services is around the highway patching and potholes budget, and we're projecting an overspend of £850,000 in this budget area. We also have pressures on staffing budgets within waste management and are continuing the market forces payment to HGV drivers, and the annual cost of that is around £350,000. We do have some continued pressure on transport budgets as well, and we will be drawing down from the ash dieback reserve for works on trees affected by ash dieback, particularly bordering roads. In terms of the place budget, the position is outturning on target. There is a small overspend, but that falls within the Homes and Safer Communities remit. And key pressures identified in this report are around the Vale Enterprise Centre and the need to close buildings, and also a shortfall on planning fee income. And there is some use of reserves that's set out within the Place Directorate towards the cost of the local development plan, and also around the project manager's fees. And the final one isn't relevant to this scrutiny committee, it's Homes and Safer Communities. This next slide sets out the efficiencies position by directorate, and you'll see there is some shortfall against neighbourhood and housing savings targets. Some of that is being mitigated by, for instance, enforcement income, but some of that will need to be offset by other budgetary areas in year. And then in terms of place, also making good progress towards the savings targets. There is some shortfall, but that's largely in respect of private housing. In terms of the reserves position, we have got significant projected use of reserves in year. A significant proportion of that is in respect of the capital programme, and obviously any slippage against the delivery of the capital programme will impact that projected use of reserves. We will continue to attempt to mitigate the overspend position in year, with a view to hopefully bringing down that unplanned drawdown from reserves as much as possible, with a view to ensuring that those reserves are there in future to help support the delivery of some of these transformation programmes and respond to risk as we move forward through the medium term. Those are the main points I was going to draw out on this report, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Gemma. Just one question from me, if I may. You referenced the £850,000 overspend on highways patching. Just wondering why that's arisen. Is that in relation to more work being done than was originally anticipated, or have costs increased, or is it an element of both? Thank you.
Chair, I think one of the key contributing factors here is around the shortfall of funding for resurfacing. So I know my highways colleagues submit a capital bid saying they need in the region of £3 million a year to maintain the condition of the roads. And in recent years, we've been significantly short of that. And I know we have had some winters that have made the road condition deteriorate as well. So I think it is an area that the council needs to invest in, but it wouldn't see immediate impact around that revenue budget. Obviously, it would take some time to see the benefit.
Thank you, Gemma. Councillor Prothero, did you want to come in?
Hello, yes, I would. Thank you, Chair. Mine is a very generalised question on the rationale behind the efficiency targets that you set. I'm just curious to find out a little bit more about how you do that. Is this a percentage of the budget, or do you look at where you've got the biggest opportunity to create savings? How do you do it? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And if I can bring in Councillor Vincent Driscoll as well, please, and then we'll come back to you, Gemma. Councillor Driscoll, did you have a question? Councillor Hooper, I think you've got your mic on. If you could switch your mic off.
Trying to indicate to speak, and it's.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Driscoll, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I thought I had just had actually. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, my question relates to rash dieback and the reserves, and have we got enough in reserves for the worst case scenario with all the ash trees in the Vale?
Thank you, Councillor. Gemma, do you want to deal with those two issues? Thank you.
Yeah, happy to. To answer Councillor Prothero's question first, I think we try and avoid giving kind of broad savings targets because we've had difficulty delivering savings on that basis in the past. So what we've asked people to do over the past few years is to put forward proposals on the basis of a series of percentages, say 3%, 5% and 10% of the budget, and then obviously saving opportunities are kind of reviewed in the round then corporately, and different levels of savings opportunities then would be taken on a directorate by directorate basis. And we've applied a very similar approach this year, although given the kind of level of challenge we're seeing in some of those directorate areas, we did provide a kind of mixed target as well, which offered some reduced level of savings around directorates such as social services and education, but obviously saw higher levels of savings for some of the discretionary areas of expenditure. In terms of Councillor Driscoll's question, in terms of the reserve funding, we haven't got sufficient in the reserve, and we will need to build in base budget funding to address these issues going forward. The drawdown from reserves has been in the region of 230,000 last year and projected for this year as well, and that's significantly reduced the available funding in the reserve. And so I think given, as Councillor Driscoll is suggesting, that the volume of ash trees within the Vale, we do need recurring funding going forward.
Thank you, Gemma. Emma, I can see you have your hand up. Do you want to come in on either of those issues before I come back to councillors?
Yes, please, Chair. I actually wanted to come back on your question, if that's okay.
Yes, please do.
Just to give you a little bit more detail on the highway overspend on the budget. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. So just to give you a bit more update, the state of the asset report, which is the highway asset report that was undertaken in 2019, said that we needed £3.5 million per annum to upkeep our highways. There's a current review of that being undertaken by CSS Wales, which is the County Surveyors Society for Wales, and I quite expect that is more likely to be in the region of 5 million required each year rather than 3.5 million. So things have gone up. But perhaps to give committee some assurance, the price that we're actually paying for potholes to be repaired is the same as it was in 2021. So we've secured a good price from that. We haven't had any rise in price. But obviously, because the capital budgets have been restricted, there's less capital going in. So the number of potholes that we have to fill in is more challenging. But the one point I did want to make the committee aware of is although you see the overspend there today, it's going to be around, I think, 1.5 million instead of the 850 million budget. I would say that the 850,000 has traditionally been overspent, and we've been lucky enough to fund that from reserves in the past. But now, obviously, our reserves are dwindling, so we are going to be noticing that budget stay at around 1.5 million. So even if we do put more investment in next year, which I hope we can in terms of road surfacing, that pothole budget is going to be maintaining at around 1.5 million if we retain the current standards that we operate, which are similar standards to other authorities in Wales. So I thought it was quite important to make you aware of that budget situation, and that it's an historic case of that budget really not being sufficient for what we need to do. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Emma, for that additional helpful, if somewhat sobering information of the reality of the position we find ourselves in terms of those associated costs. Councillor Prothero, did you want to come back in on the question that you raised? Yeah, please do.
It's just to give my thanks, please. I wanted Emma to relay my thanks to the Highways team. I know they have a very, very stretching or very small pot of money, but at least I can say for my ward, where we have potholes that just pop up, and they do, I have never had anything but a really good service from that team. And I think we need to say that, because they do their regular checks on the roads. I know they've got their I think it's 6 monthly and annually, and some maybe even more frequent than that, checks that they're doing. But outside of that, they are quick to respond. So I just wanted to say thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much, Councillor Prothero. I just want to check, Councillor Hooper, did you want to come in? Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Chair. A few points, Gemma. Firstly, on potholes, and maybe Emma can help with this as well. Wasn't there an underspent last year of 136k as reported to July's Corporate Performance and Resources Committee? And maybe not to answer it now, but it's quite interesting. So I underspent last year and now we're overspent this year. It just seems like we need to tally up that narrative in the first instance. That's the first thing to ask. I think on efficiencies, and picking up on Councillor Prothero's point, I'm interested, are the efficiencies that are allocated this year, have they all been identified and applied to something? Because we've only got a few months left of the year, and if we have a target, my experience would tell me that target won't be hit as you get closer and closer to it. So I appreciate your view on that. And the last thing, Gemma, and I think this links into things like potholes and everything else. If we're not recruiting vacancies, I'd be interested to know how many vacancies we're carrying at the moment that we've decided not to recruit for budgetary pressures this year. Again, if that's not a number you have to hand, I think this committee would be interested in knowing what that figure is, particularly in the areas that we're interested in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Gemma, are you able to address any of those issues?
I will certainly try. So,
Thank you.
Chair, I think the underspend that was reported last year was in respect of the capital programme, and I believe that's to do with the timing of when we can deliver capital works. I've been advised that if resurfacing works are undertaken at certain times of year, they don't tend to last as long, and so we try to progress resurfacing works at more favourable times of year. So I think we get to a point in the financial year where it perhaps doesn't make financial sense to progress those schemes, and therefore the funding can be sometimes slipped. And I think that's what happened last year. And certainly where we've identified additional funding in the capital programme this year that we were directing towards resurfacing, we have slipped it forward into 24-25 because it makes most sense to deliver that scheme in the summer as opposed to in the winter months. In terms of the vacancies question, you're absolutely right. I don't have that information, but I'm happy to make inquiries. I should advise that we're not holding open all vacancies, just for clarification, but there is more scrutiny and review prior to recruiting to any vacancies. So it certainly does mean we're holding more vacancies open than we would otherwise be doing so. Apology, Councillor Hooper, I've missed your middle question. Oh, okay. So my understanding is that efficiencies have either been mitigated by additional sources of income. They will be offset by reserves, but expected to be achieved in full in 24-25. And that's specifically relating to the private housing saving that was dependent on the delivery of the independent living policy. We have carried out a review in year, and we will be progressing the proposals of that review in 24-25, but that does not necessarily mean we will be delivering the saving in the same way that it's indicated in the savings tracker as it stands at the moment. We will be reviewing the progress of 23-24 savings and proposals for 24-25 savings that already stand, in addition to new proposals for 24-25 and beyond savings as part of the initial proposals when they're brought in January.
Councillor Hooper, did you want to come back in on that issue?
Yeah, just on the point of the capital underspend on road resurfacing. This year, I was just trying to flick back through the bits. You might be able to answer it easy. Have we spent it all this year? Because surely the lesson that we should be learning is to spend it when you're supposed to be resurfacing these roads and not have it so that we're then spending. It sounds like it's a missed opportunity for efficiencies in that we're filling potholes that cost a lot more money when we should be resurfacing the roads. And if there's been 136k previously, I just wonder what it is this year. I didn't see it in there. I'm sure it's there somewhere.
Gemma, before I bring you back in on that, I can see that Emma has got her hand up. So if it's okay, I'm going to bring Emma in, because I'm guessing that, Emma, you have something that you want to add to this issue.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to that question, we often carry over money for resurfacing, and Gemma gave an engineering perfect answer as to why that is. It's to do with weather conditions and the timing of when we can actually resurface. But there is another reason we sometimes hold money back. As you probably know, committee, having listened to lots of reports on resurfacing in the past, we can suddenly get, a road can suddenly go from okay to very bad very quickly with bad conditions, winter conditions. So we do tend to try and keep some money back if we need to do any emergency patching or emergency road repairs. So although we do the majority of the spend, most of our spend has gone by sort of October time, we do tend to keep a little bit back just in case we do have that emergency spend and another road, which is on that 3-year highway resurfacing programme, jumps up at us and we have to deal with that. So I just assure you, it's not the pothole budget. We're always overspent on the pothole budget. It's the resurfacing budget that we're really careful. We have a planned programme and we try to use it in the most efficient and effective way, weather conditions permitting, but also we're prudent in that if something was to happen to one of our major arterial routes that we needed to do quickly, that we would still have some money within the budget to do that. So it's the best efficient use of resources that we can manage.
Thank you very much, Emma, and I'm sure we all appreciate the need to ensure that the council does respond to emergency situations as they arise. Councillor Penn, did you have a question on this issue?
Thanks, Chair. It was just to pick up on what Councillor Prothero said.
Sorry, Councillor Penn, I think you've got some background noise. Have you got something on in the background? It's difficult for us to hear you. Can you switch it off? It sounds like we can hear something in the back.
Yes, children watching cartoons. I apologise. Can you just mute a second? Thank you. Apologies, Chair.
We understand. Please go ahead.
It was just picking up on what Councillor Prothero said about whenever I've had to contact the teams about filling potholes, they've always been incredibly efficient and got the problems that I've reported sorted really quickly. And in my ward, there are many. It was just a quick follow up on what Emma said about the pothole filling, the price per pothole. That is the same, forgive my bad memory, it is the same as it was in, I can't remember, 2019 or whatever it was. Is that to the same spec now, or has that changed? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Penn. Emma, are you able to respond to that, please?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair. It was 2021. It's the same price as, and yes, it's to the same specification. And yes, we still have the same intervention levels. So that's when I say intervention levels, that's the depth and the width of the pothole. They have to be a certain diameter, and there's lots of information on the website on that before we'll fill them. But that hasn't changed. And the price hasn't changed. It's just that we've got a lot more roads that unfortunately are deteriorating because unfortunately our capital programme is challenging as a council. There's lots of competing schemes that need to be delivered, and as such we're not getting the 3.5 million we probably need a year. And as I say, when this latest study comes out, it'll probably be 5 million. And I would think we are definitely not alone in that. In Wales, it's a really challenging time for highways and highway resurfacing.
Thank you, Emma, for that additional information. I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to assume that nobody else wants to speak on this issue. So as I said earlier, this report is before us. To note, is committee happy to move that we note the report? Councillor Hooper, thank you very much. And can I have a seconder for that recommendation, please? Councillor Champion, did you want to come in to second that? We can hear you but not see you, Councillor Champion. I think your camera is switched
quite why.
Were you wanting to second the report, Councillor Champion? If I may, while you're trying... Yeah, I can see you're trying to act. So we have Councillor Perry. Councillor Perry, were you wanting to second that recommendation? Yes, thank you very much. I can see that you're nodding, even though I can't hear you, but I think we can take that as seconded. Thank you very much. Councillor Champion, I can see that you're still asking to speak, and now your hand has gone down. Thank you. Gemma, thank you so much for taking us through 3 financial reports this evening. Thank you for answering all the questions that committee had to raise. We had a lot of issues that we wanted to discuss with you, so thank you for that. And you're very welcome to stay for the rest of the committee, but equally, please feel free to leave. Thank you. So going back to the agenda, we're going back to agenda item 5, which is the draft Vale of Glamorgan annual delivery plan for 24-25. This is the second reference from Cabinet that's before us as committee tonight, and it sets out the actions to be taken in the year ahead to deliver objectives in the 5-year corporate plan. The 24-25 plan is the 5th and final annual development annual delivery plan for the 2020-25 corporate plan. It's before committee tonight for our consideration and to give us an opportunity to pass any comments back to the Director of Corporate Resources to inform any revisions of the plan prior to Cabinet considering a final draft in due course. On that note, I'm not sure whether it's Marcus or Emma who's going to take us through it, but I think it's Marcus. Yes, here you are. Thank you, Marcus. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, As members will note, and as you've rightly pointed out, this report sets out how the draft annual delivery plan has been developed for the period 24-25 and how it aligns with the Council's full wellbeing objectives. The plan details the activities to be undertaken in 24-25 to deliver these objectives. It also details 3 critical challenges associated with the 4 wellbeing objectives, which will continue to be a key focus for the organisation in 24-25. These are organisational resilience, cost of living, and climate and nature emergencies. The commitments within the delivery plan will be reflected in annual service plans, together with a suite of performance measures, which will detail how different council services will continue to continue the delivery of our 4 wellbeing objectives. And just to say that those service plans will be coming to each of the relevant scrutiny committees in the new year. I will just really quickly, bear with me one second. I will go through the timetable associated with the plan and also how the plan was developed, so members are aware. It has been developed through discussions with Cabinet members and the strategic leadership team of the Council. In drafting the plan, the following have been considered. The Council's performance and expected progress in delivering the annual delivery plan for the current year, 23-24, the annual self-assessment report, the corporate risk register, its statutory duties, the likely availability of resources, the findings of the work of our regulators, and the views of residents and partners, as well as the PSB wellbeing plan. The timetable for consultation and approval of the annual delivery plan is set out in the report, with the 30th of November being the date Cabinet approved the draft annual delivery plan for consultation. We're now in that consultation period, which runs from the 5th of December to the 11th of January. And that consultation will be undertaken with public partners, staff, trade unions, town and community councils, and will be presented to all scrutiny committees, of which this is one. In January, the annual delivery plan will be amended or in response to any consultation feedback that is received, and then it is intended to report the actual amended plan following the consultation to the 21st of February Corporate Resources Scrutiny Committee, and then Cabinet will consider the final draft on the 22nd of February 2024, with full Council considering the final draft on the 4th of March 2024, and obviously the plan then coming into effect. I don't think there's much else I want to say at this stage, but happy to take any questions. If I can't answer those questions, obviously that's the corporate director who will be the one who's prepared this plan. I can certainly take those questions back if I can't answer them.
Thank you, Marcus. Does anyone have any questions or comments, please? So I don't see any hands raised. If I may, Marcus, just one question for me. Well, in fact, I've got 2. So objective 1.3, which is on page 11, sets out a commitment to engaging with and strengthening our relationships with the third sector, social enterprises and town and community councils to help shape and deliver local services. Obviously, those organisations are facing the same challenges as the council in terms of financial pressure, etc. So do we think we have a clear understanding about their resilience and their capacity to engage? And how is that being addressed? How are we assuring ourselves that they have that resilience and capacity to engage? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I can certainly try and answer that from the point of view of the Place Directorate's work in that area, which revolves around delivering the Shared Prosperity Fund and other work we're undertaking through our Creative Communities team. And certainly one of the areas that we are looking very much to strengthen and work with is community groups, the third sector and social enterprises. And we are providing funding through the Shared Prosperity Fund to support those groups and work with them. Obviously, at a time when it is really difficult. I think probably the Corporate Resources Director will probably want to add to that, because of obviously all the work that is currently underway around the cost of living crisis and the support that's being provided separately via that process. So probably I will ask him if he can actually come back as well in that respect. But certainly one of the areas where we are working together is in respect of an officer that's been funded to support, in particular, the three most disadvantaged communities in the borough. That officer has been funded through the Shared Prosperity Fund and is working with the Creative Communities team and the council's own and the council's resources directorate to facilitate and support those areas, but also to bring forward work that's being looked at by the Public Service Board and some of the areas there that have been picked up for most, if you like, to focus on. So there is definitely a cross directorate role that's taking place. I think, as I say, probably best for the Corporate Director for Resources to respond in respect of what's happening with his area. But I think we are very lucky. We have some of the money through the Shared Prosperity Fund, which has replaced, of course, funding which we would have received from Europe, were that still to be in place, which allows us to support some of these community organisations, third sector and social enterprises. Clearly, without that money, it would be even harder for those organisations going forward.
Thank you, Marcus. And I know that as the Tackling Poverty Champion, I've got a meeting with a corporate director, so there'll be an opportunity to explore that issue in more detail when we meet. I think it's next week. So thank you for that. I don't see anybody else who wants to come in on this issue. So again, is committee happy to we note the report, and thank you, Councillor Hooper, for indicating that you're happy to propose that. And can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Prothero? Happy to second? If you can just confirm, that would be really helpful.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Prothero. Thank you. And so we move on to the last agenda item before us this evening, agenda item 8, which again is in relation to the annual delivery plan. This is reference Q2 performance 23-24. And this report is to advise committee of the performance results for the period the 1st of April 2023 to the 30th of September 2023 in delivering our 23-24 annual delivery plan. It comes before committee so members can consider the progress being made, the remedial actions to be taken to address areas of underperformance, and to tackle the key challenges identified within the remit of this committee, with views and recommendations referred thereafter to Cabinet for their consideration and approval. Marcus, I think you're taking us through this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it is me. So if I just start, obviously, just to clarify, this performance report presents our progress at Q2, so the 1st of April 23 to the 30th September 23, towards achieving the aims of the annual delivery plan 23-24. It is worth noting that this time around, due to current capacity challenges within the corporate performance team, the format of the annual delivery plan monitoring reports has been revised temporarily. This is to enable the team to continue to provide elected members with an overview of progress in delivering our delivery plan requirements, and as aligned to each of the scrutiny committees. The presentation is appended at Appendix A. Now, what I intended doing was going through that appendix. I don't know if Gareth is able to actually present or to share it with you there. It is attached to the report as Appendix A anyway, so I will carry on in the assumption that Gareth can put it on the screen in the chamber. The report seeks elected members' consideration of the Q2 performance results and the proposed remedial actions which have been outlined to address any of the identified underperformance. Any any views that the Scrutiny Committee recommend are referred to Cabinet for their consideration. So if I now move to the plan, thank you very much, Dan, for putting that plan up. That's brilliant. So on that sheet, you can see we have the what we've achieved page, and actually there are quite a lot. So for the first time I've been doing it, this has gone on to 2 pages. I think probably if I very quickly run through some of these items for you. So there is the objective 1, work with and for our communities. We've managed to engage with a number of organisations on the preferred strategy for the replacement local development plan, with a number of sessions with community councils, PSB, the health and impact assessment workshop, and an equalities consultative forum workshop. Also, in the next quarter, we will be consulting on the preferred strategy, but just to this quarter covers the work that was done up until that stage. The community mapping toolkit is being used to ensure diverse groups are involved in the strategy and project development within our communities team, as creative communities team, as part of the placemaking work that's going on in all of the towns. It's more advanced in some towns than others. Barry and Cowbridge in particular, that work has progressed quite well. It is starting in Lantwick Major and Penarth. We've delivered the service changes to 3 weekly black bag waste collection and charging for green waste collections, which has resulted in significant savings, reduced waste and increased recycling. We've managed to attract 5 new students to be part of our planning team, which will enhance service resilience, I should say. And we've employed a dedicated officer, which I did refer to in our last report. And when I responded to the question you'd asked, Chair, we've employed a dedicated officer to engage with our most deprived communities of Buttrell, Gibbonsdown and Court Road to ensure their needs are considered when developing and implementing regeneration projects, and also looking at the work of PSP. We've engaged with schools, the Vales 50 Plus Forum, the age-friendly Vale and youth climate events to understand the barriers to active travel, established an internal placemaking group within the council to ensure all departments are involved in the placemaking process. And we've engaged with local nature partnerships and our volunteers group and third-party organisations at our countryside sites to promote better management of nature. Under our supporting learning, employment and sustainable economic growth section, we have had a number of key projects delivered by the project management unit. I won't go through all of those, and if anyone has any questions about any of them, please don't hesitate to ask. We've progressed the development of the replacement local development plan draft preferred strategy. We've launched a new business development grant scheme funded by the Shared Prosperity Fund. And to date, or certainly by the end of this quarter, the quarter that's identified here, we've had over 200 expressions of interest. We are now starting to go through those grant applications. We've over 99% of household planning applications were determined within 8 weeks. We've had a draft non-treasury investment strategy and plan for council draft non-treasury investment strategy and plan for the council has been developed and passed through Cabinet, which was agreed on the 7th of September. And we are progressing development work on the Coburn Interchange project. Under Objective 3, supporting people at home, during quarter 2 of the quarter 2, 11 dwellings approved by the planning system. Sorry, let me read that again. Supporting people at home and in their community. During quarter 2, of the 11 dwellings approved by the planning system in that quarter, 8 of those were affordable. 100% of dangerous structures were inspected within the day of being reported, and we've approved 7 affordable dwellings in Lisworney to meet local housing need. We've had, alongside supporting successful litter hubs across the Vale, we have partnered with Keep Wales Tidy to deliver community litter picking. We are supporting residents through the Shared Prosperity Fund, residents and communities through the impact of the cost of living crisis, alongside supporting several community projects, and we've also appointed an officer to support this work. We've established a new independent living policy that introduces discretionary grants, although that isn't actually under the remit of this Scrutiny Committee, and we've implemented the Welsh Government 20 mile per hour default speed limit with an estimated 95% of the design work, the default stage and plans completed by the 17th of September. Finally, objective 4, respect and enhance and enjoy our environment. We have prepared a new tree strategy, which is subject to cabinet approval. We are progressing placemaking plans in Barry and Cambridge, informed by community mapping and assessment of the needs and opportunities. We've secured shared prosperity funding to update and produce a new destination management plan for the Vale. We're developing the workplace recycling regulations for the Vale Council, and also enhance commercial recycling services that will ensure compliance of all our commercial customers. We've delivered a busy schedule of events. Positive progress is being made via Cardiff Capital Region to develop an eco-homes retrofit option for private sector housing. The energy company obligation scheme administered by Ofgem is now live, and E.ON is the energy company responsible for delivering for the Vale, and this is being promoted to residents. We have continued investment in the Vale via Section 106 funds, including a number of projects there. Again, I won't run through all of them. We have implementation of the new green waste subscription service, which has ensured service efficiency, reduced carbon emissions, and our overall reduction of our carbon footprint. We've completed works on 10 Vale trails, and we've supported a number of local bus services and 3 local community transport providers using an established budget and bus services support grant from Welsh Government. We've also utilised Section 106 funds to continue to support the council's in-house community transport provision green links. And we're working to open the reuse Shop Atlantic trading estate in Barry in December 2023. Chair, shall I take any questions on any of those items before I move on to areas for improvement?
Yes, I think that's a very good idea. Are there any questions or comments from committee members? Yes, so Councillor Hooper first, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mark. It's interesting in a bit more information on what the dedicated resource in Buttrells, Gibbonsdown and Court have been doing. I think that's an important thing. Secondly, you talked about the implementation of 20-mile-an-hour limit, and one thing that I think people have noticed is that change can be led by people who are driving at 20 miles an hour at the start of a run. And I answered the question at full council, but interested in how the council are making sure that operatives are driving at 20 miles an hour where they should, and using our softer power to persuade taxi drivers, bus drivers, etc., to drive at the speed. And the last thing, actually the last thing is related to stuff you've still got to get to, so I'll come back to that one if I can. So just those 2 questions. Thank you, Chair.
And just before I bring you back in, Marcus, if I can ask Councillor Ernest, any questions or points
just
you wanted to make?
Just a very quick one, Mark. So on objective 2, progressing development work on the Cogan interchange project. There doesn't seem anything very much happening there, except a lot of weeds growing and a very high fence around the site. There was local concern, or is local concern, when that's developed, that there should be improved access across the busy Windsor Road for people who now live in the marina area of Penarth, who are having to dodge the traffic, and it's extensive traffic, obviously being an A-class road. Whether that's going to be built into it, but also, of course, originally there was a tunnel underneath the road. When I was younger, used to go through there frequently. Seemed a missed opportunity if that development goes ahead without making advantage of the former tunnel that was there, and secondly, to provide facilities for people crossing the road. Would you care to comment on that? Thank you.
If we take, thank you, councillors, if we take those issues first, and then I'll bring in the other councillors who are also wanting to speak on this issue. Marcus, are you able to address those queries? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll probably bring Emma in on the last 2 regarding the 20-mile-an-hour limit and an element of the Cogan scheme. Just on Councillor Hooper's question around the officer who's been appointed to deal with Gibbons, Dan Buttrell's and court wards, that officer actually has only just got into post. So they're only just getting their feet under the table in terms of the connections that they're making. I understand they've been to one meeting with important community players and are just starting to get to know and get to feel the area, and they will be continuing that work now, but they did only actually start in September, so they really haven't had chance to make a big difference yet. They will do so in due course, and certainly the team itself can, if anyone wants any questions or answers around the team, I can certainly provide some. I can ask the officer who heads up the team, Nicholas Smith, to give some more information.
Yeah, thank you, Marcus. And as a councillor for one of those wards, Buttrell's ward, the officer met with myself and Councillor Johnson almost as soon as she came into post to talk to us about the issues in the ward and the plans going forward. So we look forward to hearing more in due course. Councillor Champion, could I ask you to switch your camera off until invited to come in? Thank you very much, because I suspect, Marcus, if you wanted to say any more, please do, and then I'll bring Emma in.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was really quickly just on the, and I know Emma will probably say a little bit more about this, but on the Coburn scheme, that work has really only just started. We are liaising with Transport for Wales on how that project will be developed. Sense of place is really key to us in terms of how it is developed going forward and how it links in. The issues raised by Councillor Ernest are very relevant and are being considered by the team in Transport for Wales who are pushing this forward. So that's my part of it. I don't know if Emma wants to add anything to that. So I'll turn my screen off and allow Emma to come in.
Thank you, Marcus. Emma. Sorry, Emma, did you want to add to that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Marcus. Yeah, so just to pick on the Cogan Interchange project now, which Marcus has just mentioned, Transport for Wales are actually undertaking some initial, it's called well tag work, and that work is very much in its infancy. And as the project progresses, obviously there will be potentially big community involvement and discussion around what might happen at that location. But as Marcus picked up on, it's very much about making it a place, not just about having suitable transport interchange facilities there. There's been a couple of things that have been picked up, but Windsor Road and the crossing and the links, how that links to the bay, how that links to Penarth Marina, and how things link into the town as well, and also to Langdock. So just to reassure Councillor Ernest that those are things that are being looked at, and obviously there will be the opportunity, if this project develops further, for some public scrutiny. In terms of the 20-mile-an-hour limit, my answer is speed, and speed of cars and traffic does rest with the police. It's not something the council has power to do, but I know Councillor Hooper mentioned about soft measures, and soft measures can be lots of different things, from road humps to signs to all sorts of different things. At the moment, obviously, there was clear guidance from Welsh Government about how we should implement that 20-mile-an-hour limit. It's still embedding in, I would argue. It's only been in since mid-September, and it will be a matter for the enforcement agencies to look at how that limit is enforced moving forward, and also whether communities get involved in that enforcement through things like Speed Watch. So at the moment, that isn't something the council is involved in terms of actually delivering the compliance with that speed. And that's all I've got to say on those two matters.
Can I come back on that, Chair?
Yep, Councillor Hooper, please do.
Emma, I asked the question about what the council was doing for the council employees who were driving vans, and there's the same question I asked in full council, and I got the same reply, that it's speed is the preserve the police. What measures have the council done to ensure their employees driving council vans are complying with the speed limit? Have you written to employees? Have you suggested that, you know, because there's experience this led to this question, because I've been behind council vans that have been doing over 30 miles an hour. I've been behind some that have been doing 20 miles an hour. So the question was about the council and the soft powers in relation to people who we license, taxi drivers, bus routes. Have we done anything with them? That's the question that I asked. Now, I would appreciate if that was the question that was answered rather than one that you choose. Thank you.
I think you were given an answer to that at full council, but of course you're entitled to ask it again. Councillor Hooper. And Emma, is there anything that you want to add to what you've already said in relation to that? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and apologies, Councillor Hooper, if I didn't understand your question right. I took the question as a matter of enforcement. But in terms of employees, yes, we have a policy whereby if you have a council vehicle, you need to comply with the speed limit. If you do see a vehicle that is a council vehicle that isn't complying with the speed limit, you are within your rights to take that reg and let us know, and we can deal with the employee appropriately, usually through education to start with and training. We also have trackers fitted to our vehicles, and they produce reports. So, for example, they might produce reports for speeding or for harsh braking, and again, those are things that are reviewed as and when we need to. In terms of buses, I'm afraid I don't have much control over those. We do obviously have control, as in we do spend money on contracts, so we would expect them to comply. I understand most of them are complying, which is why we have some issues or some challenges with them getting from A to B because of some of these 20 mile an hour, or that's what we're being told. In terms of taxis, yes, we provide licensing for them, but again, it wouldn't be a matter for us to enforce their speed limits. That would be a matter, in my view, for the police.
Thank you, Emma. Can I bring in Councillor Driscoll, please? Did you have a question or comment?
No, it wasn't a question or comment. It was just to declare an interest. I wasn't aware that Marcus Goldsworthy would bring up the business grants, but a company I'm a director of has applied for a grant, so I'd like to bring the attention of Democratic. Okay, thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Prothero, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So my question really was back to Marcus. He touched upon some work that the Vale's doing with E.ON, and I'm very interested to know what the Vale might be planning in terms of community energy renewables for residents. We know that energy bills are rising again this January, and with an annual average bill of £2,000 a year, this is one of the biggest cost pressures for our residents. And really, the solution to this, of course, is renewables, not fossils. So are there any plans? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And if I can bring in Councillor Driscoll, can I assume that's a legacy hand, or did you want to speak again?
No, you assume right.
Thank
Chair.
you, Councillor. If you'd like to lower your hand, thank you. That's really helpful. If I could bring in Councillor Perry next, please, and then we'll come back to you, Marcus.
Can you hear me this time?
We can.
I've got the hang of this tech at long last.
You have indeed. You have indeed, Councillor. Please go ahead.
Get my special badge later on. Yeah, just to come back on Councillor Hooper's point, and I just want to go a little bit further. As well as 20 mile an hour, can we ask our drivers not to park on footways? And it is a bit of an issue around the Vale where vans owned by the Vale Glamorgan Council are seen parked on the footway, and we need to share this with the police as well, because they tend to park on footways. And I've heard the police officers asking motorists to park on the footway, and then we get complaints that the footways are blocked. And what can we say? But well, the person was directed to park there by a police officer, so that's a little bit of a problem. A little bit more, as well as asking people to obey the speed limit and stick to 20 or 30. road design plays a crucial role in design in speed. We talk about design speeds, and what's been happening in the UK for decades now is you make the road wide, straight, so you can go on your phone. And if you stand by the A48 or other major roads in the Vale of Glamorgan, you'll see how safe the roads are, because people are there and they've got their phones there on their steering wheel and they're tapping away as they drive along. And it's perfectly safe because we've designed the roads to be safe enough that you can use your mobile phone and send a text message while you drive along a nice wide straight road. Yeah, this is not safe. So we do need to look at the manual for streets and manual for streets 2, and actually take on board what is being said in the evidence. And there was a new study from the United States of America, not the first study, but all the studies that came out on highway safety do show that narrower lanes, which will make people feel a little bit less secure and feel that they're at risk of coming off the road, make people pay a little bit more attention to where they're going, put their phones down, look at the road ahead, and consider their environment. Whereas in the Vale of Glamorgan, and if I look at Tree Hill, I've got carriageways that are in excess of 5 meters wide, and yet the M4 junction 34 to 33, the carriageways there are 3.2, 3.3, 3.2, and 3 meters wide. So there's no need for St Nicholas to have such wide carriageways. So that's something that we need to be looking at to make our streets safer by actually designing them for 20 miles an hour.
Thank you. Forgive me interrupting you. Can I just check? I understand the points that you're wanting to make, but just coming back to this report, was there any specific question that you wanted to ask?
I was just adding on to what Councillor Hooper had
Thank you.
added.
I think that point has been made. Was there anything in addition that you wanted to add to that?
I'll be nice and quiet for the rest of the evening.
No, that's fine. I'm just mindful that we want to not drift too far away from the agenda item that's before us, but thank you for raising those important points. Marcus, are you able to respond to those? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So Councillor Prothero raised the issue of community energy, which moves on from the Eco4 scheme. So just really quickly, obviously I don't want to spend too much time on this, and certainly if Councillor Prothero wants to contact me or Phil Chappell or Nicholas Sumner-Smith, who I mentioned before, we can talk a little bit more about community energy projects and where we see those going in the future. But some of the work that's currently underway is we are developing a local area energy plan with our colleagues in Cardiff Capital Region. That local area energy plan obviously deals with how the energy is currently used across the Vale of Glamorgan, but also what the future holds for that, and is looking forward. And consultants have been engaged by Cardiff Capital Region to do that. The consultants are Arab, but the work is ongoing at the moment. Indeed, we had a meeting with those consultants today about that very topic, and community energy is part of that discussion. We're also obviously reviewing the local development plan, and as part of that work, we are carrying out work to look at the decarbonisation of buildings, as well as embedded carbon, what carbon is in existing buildings when you look at retrofit, and how that can be weighed against schemes to demolish and also schemes to construct new dwellings. So that work is also currently underway. We've consultants appointed to look at that and to look at best practice across the UK. One interesting fact is that one of the only councils who've managed to get a policy into their local plan dealing with that is Bath, and we are working with the consultants who actually got that policy through. So we are hopeful that we will have certainly the strongest local development plan in Wales dealing with decarbonisation of buildings, but hopefully one that's up there with the very best in the UK as well. So that work is currently underway. And of course, we are still administering the Shared Prosperity Fund, and we are asking, as part of that, for both businesses and communities to look at options and to fund schemes which would lead to decarbonisation, but also to renewable energy type schemes going forward. So there are opportunities for both communities and businesses to get in contact with the council and to use the Shared Prosperity Fund to actually access renewable energy. The Eco4 scheme, which Councillor Prothero referred to, is a scheme that's very much aimed at house owners who do not have the means to perhaps carry out retrofit to their properties themselves. That scheme is administered by E.ON, and as a council, all we're doing is we are promoting the scheme to residents so that they feel comfortable in contacting E.ON to access that funding. So there's a few areas I've covered there. I won't go through it all, but certainly if Councillor Prothero wants to speak to us separately about that, happily to do so.
Thank you, Marcus. Councillor Prothero.
That's wonderful, Marcus. Thank you for that. I will contact you. I just want to make sure that within this local area energy plan, you do include the rural Vale, which is a very, very different setup to the towns and the needs. An awful lot of people where we still are on oil. You know, they're not even on the mains. So we just need to make sure that there is a different plan for the rurals. That's all. But thank you ever so much.
And Chair, if I just could confirm that the local area energy plan does cover the whole of the Vale and covers the issues for those residents both at the furthest west and furthest east. And I'm on oil as well, so I know all about that.
Thank you, Marcus. And I can see that Emma, you wanted to come in. I'm guessing perhaps you wanted to comment on the issues that were raised by the councillor in relation to footways. Forgive me if I'm wrong with that assumption.
That's absolutely right, Chair. I just wanted to respond to a couple of the points that Councillor Perry had made this evening. Pavement parking, obviously we ask all of our employees that drive fleet to park in an acceptable and safe manner. You can park on the footway. You can, you know, it is permissible to do that, except where you're causing an obstruction. And if you're causing an obstruction, then that is actually a matter for the police. But again, if there was inconsiderate parking that was seen by any of the councillors or anybody else on this call, again, like the speeding issues earlier, we'd obviously encourage people to let us know so that we can speak and help the employee understand where the best place is for them to park. In terms of powers for pavement parking, that is something that's currently being considered by Welsh Government. And it is likely that there will be a consultation on councils having powers to look at enforcing where people park on a pavement, causing an obstruction. The key will be the definition of obstruction and what that actually comprises of, and how we actually enforce, because there are lots and lots of very narrow roads in the Vale. And sometimes if people want to park, they have very little option if they don't obstruct the road but to put their wheels up onto the pavement, and that's particularly the case in some of the valleys authorities as well. So it's quite an emotive issue, and it's one that we need to take a balanced approach to ensure that people can still walk on the footway, but also that cars are catered for in a safe manner. In terms of road design, we do use manual for streets on our new estates. Obviously, I don't have a pot of money to redesign all the existing roads we have, but obviously where we get the opportunities through developments that come through planning, we would look to use the manual for streets and to use the guidance within that, which, as Councillor Perry correctly says, the roads will be a lot narrower. In terms of phones and road safety, obviously that is against the law, and again that would be a police matter. But we do get involved in road safety initiatives, and there's been a few whereby there's a group of police and ourselves from a road safety perspective that might look for people that are on their phones and obviously deal with them at the spot on site. So there are quite a few initiatives of that happening and dealing with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Can I bring in Councillor Champion, please? Did you have any questions or comments?
Right. Hopefully I've got this right. If I go back to Marcus, objective 3, during Q2, 11 dwellings, 8 of which were affordable. Was that 11 dwellings or 11 dwelling schemes? And I'm glad that Marcus found my thing about Bath Council useful.
Marcus, are you able to clarify that, please?
I believe it's 11 dwellings. I would have to get planning just to confirm that, but I believe that in that quarter, 11 dwellings were approved, and that obviously 8 of those were affordable. I think 7 of them were actually the Liz Burney scheme, so because they were all affordable. And yes, thank you very much, Councillor Champion. Your comments on the VAR scheme were very useful and well accepted. So.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Marcus. So, Marcus, if we come back to you now, if you can take us through the rest of the annual delivery plan Q2 performance report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll do the areas for improvement service plan activity, and then obviously take some more questions if anyone has any, and then move on to the final section. So in objective 1, which is work with and for our communities, we have been responding to Audit Wales findings on the review of the scheme of delegations for planning. That report is due to go to, I think, Planning Committee in the new year, and with a number of recommendations. We've continued to lobby Welsh Government for regular planning fee updates that reflect the actual cost of service provision and inflation. The limited resources continue to impact on progress in developing online services such as parking permits, automated systems for fleet and public transport, and asset management systems for parks and neighbourhood assets. We are progressing work to support income generation, contributing to service sustainability, including promoting MOTs to the public, consulting on school transport charging policy, post-16 learners, and charging policy for public use of electric charging vehicle points at council offices. Under Objective 2, supporting learning, employment and sustainable growth, we have managed finally to appoint 2 additional officers to our Creative Communities team. Unfortunately, we have had to go out go out twice to get suitable candidates, because first time around we didn't get suitable candidates in that for that team, but we have managed to do that this time round. We have had 11 out of 14, so 79% of listed building applications were determined within 8 weeks. The appointment of a new conservation officer will improve this performance. Again, we have taken some time to recruit to this post, and like with a lot of our professional posts, particularly in planning, we are struggling to get people into the roles. We are progressing the upgrade to Cambridge Town Centre bus stops, and that is subject to securing suitable Section 106 funding. In Objective 3, supporting people at home in their communities, disabled facilities grants are referred to. I won't go through that because that's not actually under the remit of this committee. We are progressing work on implementing cycle and pedestrian facilities in accordance with the approved active travel network maps for the Vale of Glamorgan. We're continuing to work with stakeholders, housing teams, housing associations and private landlords to improve recycling for services at flats and apartments, and to encourage and increase participation. And we're continuing to focus on refreshing supply chain mapping for all Priority 1 service areas requiring a business continuity plan, reflecting lessons learned over the past 2 years, and cognizant with the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act's Sustainable Development Principle. Finally, Objective 4, respect, enhance and enjoy our environment. We are the project delivering sustainable alternative sewage arrangements for residents at Channel View, Marcross, Croft John Penmark is in the process of being re-tendered due to the previous successful tender contractor withdrawing. We've completed the conversion of all street lighting to LED. Approximately 562 bespoke and ornamental lanterns remain to be converted. And additional funding is required due to the cost of these lanterns. We've progressed audit work for cycle-friendly accreditation, which has been delayed due to other commitments. Progressing the audit work for the cycle-friendly accreditation has been delayed due to other commitments. We complete and deliver the environment and parking enforcement policy, which has been delayed due to service capacity challenges. And the final decision on funding is awaited from Welsh Government following technical queries on the Land Mace flood alleviation scheme. So yet again, if there are any questions on any of those issues, happy to take them now or move on to the emerging areas.
Thank you, Marcus. Do any councillors have any comments or questions in relation to that aspect of the report, please? No, I don't see any hands. So if we could move on to the final area of the report. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, Chair. And again, this is the emerging areas of development and activity which are being picked up through the annual delivery plan. And that is following the sharing of information on the UK, working with our and for our communities again, objective 1, following the sharing of information on the UK government's community ownership fund, there has been interest from communities for asset transfers, and work will progress in promoting opportunities to support communities through this process. Further enhance succession planning arrangements to ensure service resilience and development of our workforce for the future. So service planning is really important to us going forward, and resilience of our workforce. And following positive progress at Whitmore and Pencoitra, we're progressing opportunities for expanding and sharing the use of outdoor sporting space and indoor halls in our school estate. Under Objective 2, supporting learning, employment and sustainable economic growth, there's a continued focus on strengthening community-led local development. Given limited resources, a data demand-led approach is vital to ensure that resources are targeted in the most effective ways. There's a continued focus on green spaces, public areas and transport infrastructure as part of supporting the recovery of our town centres post-COVID-19 as part of placemaking work. And there's a continued development of the replacement local development plan with the strategy being put out to public consultation. That's actually happened in this quarter we're currently in, but that consultation process has started. Under Objective 3, supporting people at home and in their community, is a continued focus on effectively leveraging external capital and revenue funding to support our communities and businesses and invest in our regeneration assets to progress and progressing successful project bids. A continued focus on using financial assistance in the form of Transforming Towns, the placemaking grant, Transforming Towns is in there twice, the Transforming Towns loan scheme to target empty and underutilised buildings in our town centres. And subject to funding, progress improvements to public conveniences at Ogmore Beach, Southern Down Beach and Mantwick Major Beach. And then finally, Objective 4, in respect, enhance and enjoy our environment. We're progressing the Council's agreed 10-year waste management strategy, delivering upgrades to the gateway into Cosmoston, progressing local area energy plan, which we've already talked about, introducing biodiversity enhancements on all developments, contributing towards climate and nature emergencies. So that's a part of the planning process. Subject to funding, progressing a new household waste recycling centre in the Western Vale. We've already talked about that as well during the meeting. And continuing to work to retain a strong countryside volunteer base at both country parks and to help with rights of way maintenance. And we're working with businesses via the local area energy plan and hoping to appoint a business decarbonisation officer to encourage behaviour change and support the decarbonisation agenda. That post is funded, but we haven't yet gone out to look for a suitable candidate. And finally, as we've said before, we're progressing the review of the Council's local development plan. Those are emerging areas of activity. And then finally, there are some emerging areas of concern, which I should just quickly run through, which are Objective 1, working with and for our communities. Attracting suitably qualified staff within a competitive market remains challenging. I've referred to that already. And we are working to improve succession planning initiatives. One of the areas we've done this is in our planning area, where we've appointed a number of students from Cardiff University into roles, and that has been really successful in terms of helping us fill posts in the future. And it's a method we've used for a number of years now to get people into planning roles. But the ongoing skills shortages, supply and cost pressures associated with capital and other projects are becoming even more challenging as well. So we not only are we struggling to get people into key positions, but obviously actually delivering projects is becoming harder because of a number of things, lack of skills with some of our contractors, but supply and cost pressures are also really difficult at the moment. Under objective 2, supporting learning, employment and sustainable economic growth, we're accessing complex new UK government funding streams is actually quite difficult. We are finding that a number of streams are coming out of the blue. So you probably have heard about the UK government's long-term plans for town funding, which the council has been awarded for Barry. We were not advised that was going to be made. That award was going to be made before it was actually made, and we still are waiting to hear what it actually means in terms of funding requirements. But these funding streams are relatively complex. They generally are competitive, and they do require a considerable resource to access and then administer them going forward, because we're dealing with people that we haven't dealt with in the past. So that continues. We are obviously very pleased that we've also been awarded the Levelling Up Award, Round 3 Levelling Up Award of nearly 20 million. But yet again, we are still working through the fine print on that to ensure that any project is deliverable within the timeframes set out. Under Objective 3, supporting people at home and in their community, the success of placemaking obviously will remain dependent on the support of our communities and active involvement from town councils in the process. And we need to be really careful that we're not seen as ignoring our rural communities with placemaking, and particularly as we've now lost the Creative Rural Communities team. Although, obviously, as a council, we have created a new Creative Communities team which covers the whole of the Vale. And finally, Objective 4, in terms of respecting, enhancing and enjoying our environment, we need to ensure that the public highway is repaired effectively, and insurance claims are kept within limits and public satisfaction is improved within the budget that we have. And that remains extremely challenging, as Emma has already detailed in a previous part of the meeting. Maintaining the waste and recycling services in a competitive HGV driver market remains challenging, and there are a number of challenges supporting the shift to the circular economy. So those are all those areas dealt with, Chair, so happy to take questions on any of the issues that have raised there.
Thank you, Marcus. So are there any questions or comments from councillors in relation to those two areas of the report? Councillor Hooper, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a general point. So we've had this report for a week. Marcus, just to save your voice in the future, you might want to just do highlights. I think it will help our time that we scrutinise it, just as it might save your voice. I've got 3 points on the latter part of it. You talk about updated conveniences at Ogmore Beach, and we had a report, and I'm surprised it's not in the emerging area of concern, that both Ogmore Beach and Watchtower Bay have both been considered unsafe for bathing. The Watchtower Bay is used by a number of groups who use it all year round. And I'm just interested why it's not in there, and should it be in there as emerging area of concern. The next point relates to complexity of UK government schemes, and I'll link it into the next. It's the levelling up bid. Can you just, and you did just reference it in your narrative then, but in terms of the complications of dealing with this and the timescales associated with it, I'd welcome just a little bit more on that, please, Marcus, and that'll do. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just before I ask you to respond to that, Marcus, just a comment, Councillor Hooper. Of course, we all, as members of this committee, have the papers in advance, and so we have the opportunity to read them. But the point of officers coming to scrutiny is so that they can take us through the papers, which is generally considered to be very helpful, and then give us an opportunity to scrutinise them. So I welcome and I'm grateful for officers' support to this committee. Marcus, would you like to respond to those comments, please, before I bring in other councillors? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And yes, I am conscious. I think, just for members to note, I think there's probably more in this report than would normally be, because I think there's been an element of putting everything else in it and not perhaps weeding through it as much as would normally happen due to the pressures with our corporate resources team. So I suspect it won't be quite as long next time, and I do apologise. It has been as long, although it has raised a number of important issues. Can I deal with the complexity of schemes first in respect of the levelling up bid, and then perhaps come on to the issue of the water quality, and perhaps I can bring Emma in to support me on that particular part of it. In respect of the levelling up bid, we are due to have a report coming to Cabinet and obviously Scrutiny in the new year, which will detail where we are with all of the various funding streams that have currently or have been announced, let's say, in November. So first thing to say is that both the long-term plan for towns funding and the levelling up funds were only awarded less than a month ago. The council's still getting its head around what those mean, and in some cases we don't.
Forgive me interrupting you. Councillor Ernest, can I ask you to switch your camera and microphone off, please? I think we're getting some interference with sound. That's lovely. Thank you very much. Apologies, Marcus. Please continue.
No problem, Chair. So we will be reporting back. We are still at this stage dealing with UK government colleagues to actually ascertain what the requirements are for both those areas of funding. Members may recall that with the Shared Prosperity Fund, it took in the order of 6 months for us to clarify in the end what some of those funding requirements and what some of the complexities were around some of the reporting issues. And that actually ate into the first year of the Shared Prosperity Fund, unfortunately. And we are hoping that doesn't happen with the current award, because with the levelling up funds, the project has to be delivered by end of March 2026. And obviously with transforming towns, the way the timetable was set out in the letter that was written to us expected a town's board to be set up in the new year, the new financial year in 2024. And we have yet to receive information about that. So we are hopeful that we will receive a lot of information. All I can really say for Councillor Hooper is that we will be reporting in more detail once we've received that in the new year, setting out what that means for both the Levelling Up Fund and hopefully for the long-term plan for towns. In respect of the water quality issues, just to say that obviously the reason they're not probably picked up in this report, I believe, is that that was probably to do with the date. We have to remember that this quarter is a different, isn't actually the current quarter we're in. Emma, I don't know if you want to come in and add anything more to that.
I can see you've got your hand up, Emma, so I'm guessing you do. Thank you.
I was going to make exactly the point that Marcus has made. It's quite clear this is a Q2 performance report, and the recent water quality at both Ogmore and Watchtower Bay, which unfortunately has come out as poor, was a matter that's only just happened in the last couple of weeks. So that emerging issue will clearly come through in Q3 performance, which obviously will come before this committee in due course.
Thank you, Emma. Can I bring in Councillor Prothero, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hooper got there before me about the water quality, but my question really is more to do with what the council can do to protect bathers. As we know, the council is not responsible for the water quality. That's National Resources Wales and the Welsh Water. And there are lots of reasons why there would be the issues that we're having at Ogmore. That Ogmore Beach wasn't included in the original bathing water review back in 2013, when it's been a bathing beach since I was 5 and moved here. So it's always been a very, very popular bathing beach, and is probably the surfer beach in this area, which is why I'm coming on to the fact that even though the water quality has been designated as poor, and even though we are obliged to put signs up to tell people not to go in the sea, you will still see many, many people surfing now in the sea. So the question again is, I know we can't change this, and this is going to take a while, but there are things that we could do to warn people other than signs. there was an early warning system, a pilot that I requested Ogmore be included in, that we did with NRW this year, and I was told no. There have been showers that have been put on beaches. We don't have them in Ogmore. I'd like to see if, as our response to this as a council, that we could look to see what we could do so we can at least protect people who will use this water for the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prothero. Emma, did you want to come in on that issue, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The points that Councillor Prothero made are well made, and as she's rightly said, the water quality at those locations does go down to other authorities other than ourselves. But obviously, we have an interest in trying to get our water quality to the best possible quality from a tourism perspective, but also from people that need to want to use the water safely. We will have to put signs up that is a requirement, as Councillor Prothero has alluded to, and we will be looking to try and find out what has actually caused these poor results. There are a number of theories already regarding rainfall within the testing time, and also potentially looking at, and I say potentially, I say it very, very loosely, to do with dogs on beaches as well. You've only got to get one bad day and then have the test taken then, and that's it, and you can't go back from it. So I think as a council, we will be looking to work with the relevant authorities to try and ascertain what has caused these problems, and to try and get ourselves out of that poor status and back up to a more acceptable status. So although it's a fait accompli, we can't change those results. We obviously can look forward to the future to try and improve those results with other agencies. So hopefully that gives Councillor Prothero some assurance that we're not just sitting back on it. We are going to look forward for it.
Thank you, Emma. Councillor Ernest, please, and thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I hadn't realised I pressed the wrong button, but I'm new to the
Please
system
don't
tonight.
worry. It happens to all of us. Please don't worry.
It does indeed, yes. Quick question to Marcus, really. Objective 1, first line, Marcus. Attracting and retaining suitably skilled staff within a competitive market, remaining challenging. We seem to have had a problem in attracting staff to the Vale of Glamorgan Council for quite some years now. And indeed, in my previous time on the council, which dates back as far as 2012, I seem to have heard the same point coming up. We don't seem to have learned an awful lot in the last 10, 11 years or so. Can you tell us why the Vale of Glamorgan, is a very pleasant place to live and hopefully work, is having these difficulties in attracting competent staff? I'm thinking particularly, for example, of the conservation officer post that has been or had been vacant for a long, long time, and it's only recently been filled. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Marcus?
Thank you, Chair. The issues that the Vale of Glamorgan are suffering are being suffered by every council throughout the UK, I think is probably fair to say. There are a number of complex issues behind it. I'm sure salaries and other issues, and probably eroding of some of the benefits that council employees have benefited from over the years are probably behind a lot of it. In terms of my specific area, where we tend to have a lot of planners and professional planners employed, one of the issues we are seeing going forward is that there are less people doing that course in university, and because of that, the private market for planners is hoovering up a lot more than they used to, and therefore the percentage of people who want to work in local government is falling. And I think generally across the field, unfortunately, local government is being seen as a less attractive place to work. We've been talking about, obviously, the terrible cost pressures that the council is under at the moment, and that does mean that while in the past councils were seen as very secure places to work, that's not the case anymore. And there will, I'm sure, be some difficult decisions having to be made because of the difficult budget we're in. So it's a very wide-ranging number of reasons. As a council, we've taken a number of we've undertaken a number of things to try and overcome some of those issues, whether it be with our HGV drivers in terms of paying an extra salary amount to keep them there. All that for us with the planning system. I think I referenced it earlier. We've employed students who are coming to the end of their degrees and need a year out qualification. We've employed more and more of those students, and what you tend to find is the more you employ, when we do have vacancies, the people who've worked for us previously, they do want to come back and work for us. So it has provided a really good avenue to get extra, if you like, resilience into the system. And you can't beat a year-long interview, can you either? So we are doing a lot to try and improve staff resilience. And I know Tracy Dickinson, who's our head of human resources, is also involved at the moment in looking at what we can do, what further things we can do to try and encourage retention, but also to encourage people into roles. But it remains a really difficult challenge. In respect of the conservation officer post which you referred to, actually that post hasn't been vacant for that long. That post, the occupier of that post left early in 2023 to go to another council. Our first round of interviews, unfortunately, didn't flag up an officer, but in our second round, we did get a suitable. In fact, we had two officers, and very sadly, one of those officers had to leave us because of medical issues. And so we are still left with a full-time conservation officer following that, and obviously they are picking up quite a lot of work because the post was vacant for about 4 to 5 months. But unfortunately, that is about the time it does take to fill a new post. When somebody does leave, you're doing pretty well if you get somebody new in post within 4 months. It's quite a difficult process in terms of once you've got to attract people, interview, and then get them into the role. 4 months is pretty good. So hopefully I can reassure you, we are working to overcome those issues, but it remains a really challenging market, even though obviously the economy itself is perhaps not doing as well as it was. In a number of areas, it remains extremely challenging to get people into roles. And I think that's not just a Vale issue, that's right across both South Wales and the whole of Wales, really. And we are competing in a very tight market. One of the things I would say is that each one of those councils, which I referred to in Cardiff Capital Region, for example, they're all in the same. If you can work for one, you can work for all of them. So it is difficult.
Thank you very much indeed. I think it's well worth exploring that, because obviously a staffing issue affects all aspects of the council's work. So thank you very much, Marcus. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Marcus. I see no other hands indicating anybody wants to speak on this issue. So can I ask, is committee happy to move that we note the report? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. And is somebody happy to second that, please? Councillor Prothero, are you happy to second? I can see you've raised your hand. If you could just confirm that, that would be really helpful.
Yes, I am, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Prothero. And coming back to the agenda, I have no issues which are urgent under Part 1 or Part 2. So can I thank everybody for their attendance. I look forward to seeing you at our next meeting in January. And meanwhile, can I wish you all a very Merry Christmas. And as I say, look forward to seeing you in the new year. Thank you.
Happy Christmas, Chair, and everyone else.
Thank you, Councillor.
And you, everybody.